Ever wondered why researchers don't just study everyone in a population? Why do they only select a subset? Well, that's what we call sampling, and it's a crucial part of research studies. Sampling, in essence, is the process of selecting a subset of individuals from a population to participate in a study. It's like getting a slice of cake to taste instead of eating the whole thing. You don't need to consume everything to understand the flavor. The goal of sampling is to capture a snapshot of the larger population that is as representative as possible. This way, the findings of the study can be generalized to the population as a whole. By using a sample, researchers can save time, money, and effort while still obtaining valuable data. In other words, sampling is like a bridge connecting the specific findings of a study with the broader context of the population. So, sampling saves resources while still giving us reliable results. But how do researchers decide who to include in their sample? That's where different sampling techniques come into play. First, let's dive into probability sampling techniques, where every individual has a known chance of being selected. Starting with simple random sampling, it's the gold standard of probability sampling. Picture a giant hat filled with the names of every person in a population. You reach in without looking and pull out a name. That's simple random sampling. Each individual has an equal chance of being selected. Next, systematic sampling. Imagine that same hat, but this time we're picking one name every 10 selections. We're still giving everyone a chance, but we're doing it in a systematic way. This method is easier to implement, though it can be biased if the groups are not representative of the population. Then there's stratified sampling. Instead of one big hat, we have smaller hats representing different groups or strata, such as age groups, genders, or races. We pull names from each hat to ensure our sample represents all strata in the population. Lastly, we have cluster sampling. It's like having several boxes, each representing different geographic areas or institutions. We randomly pick a few boxes, and then we include everyone in those selected boxes in our sample. It's a handy technique when sampling the entire population is challenging or costly. Probability sampling techniques are rigorous and unbiased, but sometimes they are not feasible due to constraints like time, money, or access to the population. When probability sampling isn't an option, researchers turn to non-probability sampling techniques. First, let's dive into convenience sampling. As the name suggests, this method is all about convenience. Researchers select individuals who are easiest to reach or respond quickest. For instance, a company might survey customers who visit their website simply because they're readily available. Next up, we have voluntary response sampling. Here, individuals choose to participate in the study. Think of those online surveys you fill out when you're bored or intrigued. That's voluntary response sampling in action. Now let's discuss purposive sampling. This technique involves selecting individuals based on specific characteristics or qualities. For example, if a study is focused on professional chefs, researchers would specifically seek out individuals with that experience. Our fourth type is snowball sampling. Imagine a snowball rolling downhill, gathering more snow as it goes. This method works in a similar way. Participants are asked to refer friends or acquaintances who fit the study criteria, creating a snowball effect of increasing participants. Finally, we have quota sampling. Here, researchers set a quota for certain characteristics in the sample that match those of the overall population. For instance, if a country's population is half men and half women, a quota sample would aim to reflect that same gender distribution. While non-probability sampling techniques may introduce some bias, they can be useful when it's not possible to use probability sampling. So, we've covered a lot of ground on sampling techniques. Let's quickly summarize what we've learned. In probability sampling, every individual has a known chance of selection. It includes simple random sampling, where everyone stands an equal chance of being chosen. Systematic sampling, on the other hand, involves dividing the population into groups and picking one individual from each. Stratified sampling divides the population based on shared characteristics and picks a random sample from each stratum. Lastly, cluster sampling divides the population into clusters, selects a random sample of these clusters, and includes all individuals within. Non-probability sampling, where selection chances are unknown, includes convenience sampling, selecting the easiest individuals to reach. Voluntary response sampling involves individuals volunteering for the study. Purposive sampling selects individuals based on specific characteristics, while snowball sampling recruits participants through referrals. Lastly, quota sampling picks individuals matching population characteristics based on quotas. Remember, the choice of sampling technique depends on the research question, the population, and the resources available. So, the next time you read a research study, pay attention to the sampling technique used. It can tell you a lot about the reliability of the findings.